there, and welcome to Your Worth Your Way, the podcast that's all about helping you understand that you are worthy of prioritizing your own joy without feeling selfish or guilty. I'm Debbie Lucas, the Joy Alchemist, and each week I'll be bringing you honest, heartfelt conversations with incredible guests, coaches, thought leaders, and soulful humans who'll share their stories and insights on self-worth, confidence, personal growth, and how to create a life that feels authentically yours. This isn't about cookie cutter advice or quick fixes. It's about real talk, practical takeaways, and plenty of soulful inspiration to help you live life your way. So grab your favorite cuppa, get comfy, and let's dive into today's episode. Today, I am joined by the very vibrant Christi Dickey, a performance life coach and owner of Platinum Performance Coaching. She merges behavioral science with consciousness expansion, helping clients to discover that transformative power of consciousness expansion, personal growth, and overcoming the patterns that hold them back. With a foundation rooted in psychology and a deep curiosity about the unseen forces that shape our reality, she invites you to embark on a journey of self-discovery, healing, and empowerment. And today we'll be diving into identifying the stories and patterns that we have adopted that were never ours to begin with, living authentically, finding your purpose, and delving into the hard problem of consciousness using behavioral science and to help change patterns of behavior. So welcome, Christi. That was a mouthful of an introduction, but so much captured in that. So tell us a little bit about your story and what led to the work that you're doing right now.
Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for inviting me on as a guest. I'm honored to be here. So, sure, I can talk to you a little bit about my journey, which has been complicated, as I'm sure many women would say the same thing. So, how I arrived into this particular space of coaching was a bit of a winding path. So, for the past almost 30 years, I've been in special education. So, I started out as a speech therapist. And then moved into a role of administration. And always, though, my focus was in the world of autism. And if you're not a part of that world, let me just kind of lay the groundwork there. There is a heavy emphasis there on behavior science, which helped me tremendously. And I'll circle back to that in a minute. So, in that leadership role, learning so much about the science of behavior, I also learned so much about just the human spirit, right? So working with people who are on the spectrum, seeing the capacity for the human spirit to evolve and learn, the connections that can be made, even if my communication partner is nonverbal, like the bonds that are made are tremendous, and the ripples out that happen. So not just with those kids, but with their family members. And in that era of my life, I was also so big into like teaming and collaboration, which, it did another couple of things. It taught me more about like group dynamics, how to be truly present, how important it is to be your authentic self. So the minute that I just let go of the rope of trying to perform, here's Christi the leader. No, just Christi. Be that. That's what people want. That's what people will value, follow. And it was just a rich sort of growing ground for me to evolve as a human. Um, so prior to that, though, in my own personal life, I had gone through so many challenges. I grew up in the US in the deep South, I had a lovely childhood, right? But there's also some cultural norms that were imposed on me that definitely left some deep grooves into like what I believed about myself, what I believed about my capacity. I can remember as a senior in high school, going into the guidance counselor's office to talk about what I wanted to do, right? As I was leaving high school. And I said, yes, I want to go to college. I think I want to be like maybe a psychiatrist and she would, oh, no. Do you want to be a secretary or a teacher?
Wow.
So I was like, okay, those are my options. But I mean, looking back, it was like, I don't have any bad feelings about that. It was just the era I was in, right? And I did eventually end up in education, which I said I would never do, but
Mhm.
there I was,
Yeah.
and it taught me so much. And moving past that, I just was in several different, very like codependent, narcissistic type of
Mhm.
relationships, which just demolished me. So there was a certain point where I was hitting rock bottom and then slowly, gradually pulled out of that pit. And then almost simultaneously, as I was coming out of that, I'm stepping into leadership, which seemed scary, but it was this beautiful time for me of evolution, of being affirmed, of saying, yes, you can. You have something in you. You could help people. You can be a leader. And I had so much fun with that and learned so much about the science of behavior, of the spirit of people and humanity, and the power of what a group can do when they get a mission in mind and you can work together, the possibilities that can come out of that. So all the things that I learned as a leader had such huge impacts on my own life. So along the way, in being in that leadership role, I was constantly coaching other people. And as I approached, the time to sort of leave that chapter behind and retire from that and think about what's next, I had so many people that came to me and said, the one piece you should not lay down is the coaching piece. And how you were able to bring that to that space and work with professionals, not just the kiddos, but work more so with the professionals to help them evolve as leaders and educators and people that speak into other people's lives. And it just resonated so deeply. It just was like, yes, this is the thing that I love to do. I could talk about it all day, anything to do with consciousness, esoteric things, and the science of behavior, which is it's such a weird blend,
Yeah.
especially, in like the business space to say, hey, yes, I know all about the science of behavior, but I also know a ton about esoteric themes and spiritual themes and consciousness expansion. And if you don't have performance with soul, you've got just an empty tank. You have to bring them together. So that was a long-winded version of how I ended up here.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I love how you have brought all aspects of your life together. And I often say to clients and to anybody that will listen, really, you're never starting over, you're starting from where you're at, and you bring all that wisdom and knowledge and experience with you into this next chapter of your life. And I think yours is such a beautiful example of how you've kind of like synergized all your experiences both as a professional and in your personal life to be able to now be helping other people. And am I correct in understanding you're kind of just at the point now where you're going to go all in full time in your coaching? Is that right?
Yes, so
Yeah.
I am, Debbie, and it's an exciting time and a little bit scary. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm like jumping off a cliff, but I
Ah,
know it's not really that dramatic,
yeah.
right? Yeah, it transitions are always hard for all of us. None of us really like to be in that space of change. But here I am, and I'm just trying to just embrace it. And yeah, I'm working on like not controlling it, as weird as that might sound,
Yeah.
but just like staying open to what comes my way, what's going to fit, where's my space? Where am I supposed to be? And what a blessing to have the luxury of being in this space right now of it's okay. I can go slowly. I can wait. I can let things evolve. I can let the synchronicities start to kind of point me in the right direction. And that's really what I'm kind of working on daily, which is hard for me because I like a plan. I really like a
Mm-hmm,
plan.
mm-hmm.
And right now I have a sort of a rough idea of what I want to do, but I'm trying not to control it.
Yeah, no, and I love that because I'm 4 months into that journey. It was almost 4 months to the day where I kind of finished up in my kind of employment and stepped into coaching full time. So I completely understand the anxiety and the unsettledness that comes with transitions. But one thing that really helped me at the time was I did a lot of journaling around feeling safe and fear of the unknown. And one of the reframes and affirmations that I now use is there are endless possibilities in the unknown. And it's exactly as
Yeah.
you said, it's just about like being very present, being very conscious, and noticing what's coming into your world and going with what feels right, and kind of,
Mhm.
having that luxury and that freedom to say no to what doesn't feel right as well. And I think that's such a beautiful place to be. And for a lot of the listeners, and a lot of the people that you and I both probably would work with, it's not necessarily about giving up your job. Sometimes it could be a smaller change. It could be
Mhm.
ending a relationship, it could be moving home, it could be, it could be anything. Anything that's new and different is always going to feel scary, because as we know
Absolutely.
from the science part of it, your
Yeah.
unconscious mind wants to keep you safe, doesn't it?
Yes.
So you kind of shared a little bit there about, like what you've learned in your professional life, overcoming patterns of narcissistic relationships in your personal life. Was there a particular moment in time, or was it more of a gradual realization that, you were ready to step out of that kind of past patterns in life into this new, it's not, I don't like to say new version, because it's always who you were. You're going to step into this new chapter of your life.
It was, I think it was slow at first, because I think recovering from narcissistic abuse is no small thing. It's not easy. So for anybody that's listening, my heart goes out to you, because I know how hard it is. The beliefs that you can tuck away into your heart in deep, deep, deep spaces and believe to be true is hard to overcome. So be patient with yourself, as you heal and remember who you really are. So there were some years where it was just slow. There was a lot of time, where it was just me and my two kids, and just creating a safe space for us in my home. That was kind of my goal. And then very slowly, some things just started to happen. So um, I would get like Audible one time sent me, like, we think you would like this. It was a podcast. And it was just like introducing more esoteric kind of ideas. And the name of it was Major Frequency. It was a young man who had had leukemia, and traditional medicine wasn't working for him. So he starts to explore the deeper layers of consciousness and reality. And I found it fascinating. And that was the very first time I even played around with ideas like that, right? So that happened. And then a major thing happened. I walked around for about a week with a ruptured appendix and
Oh,
didn't
wow.
know that it was
Wow.
ruptured. I
How,
thought that it,
how on earth did you not? That must have been so painful.
well, one of the side effects, I think, of coming through abuse is you have like this really strong capacity to ignore pain, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
I even
Wow.
today, if I have a little bit of something, I'm like, pay attention to that, because my body has like dialed into that frequency of
Yeah,
like, don't worry about it.
yeah.
So I thought that I had the norovirus, and even when I went into the ER, I was apologizing. I'm so sorry I'm taking up your time, but I've just been so ill. Turns out I was walking around with a ruptured appendix. And I'll cut to the chase. It was very serious. I almost died. And in that space of being very, very ill and recovering, I would say I was in sort of like this very liminal space.
Mm,
Um, I wouldn't say it was like a near death experience, but it was similar. I had some very, very strong spiritual things that came through in that moment. I had been brought up very, very devout, uh, Southern Baptist, right? I
mm-hmm,
came out of that experience like wide open, just
mm-hmm.
wide open, like, oh wow, there is so much more here. And that sort of sparked something, Debbie, and it just completely changed. Then right after that, COVID happened.
Wow. Okay.
And so, because I couldn't go to the gym, I started practicing yoga. So it was like all these little steps just kept leading me more and more to peeling away all the stories that were imposed on me. Like, I'm not those things. I'm who I want to be. I'm me at the core of me, who I was when I was born into this world. The rest of the things that I thought were true, the beliefs that I held, they're just stories. That's not real. That's not really me. So I've just been on this journey of like really talking a lot about just be your authentic self. Who are you if nobody was around? You know, if you were at home by yourself doing whatever you wanted to do, what would that be? Who would that person be? Let's be that, you know? So and there's just such a release. You know what I mean? Like to just be in the moment. I'm just me. The minute I feel any hint of like a social anxiety, there's my sign that I'm trying to perform something. Just let it go, you know, just be me.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And gosh, like, it must have been quite a scary experience for you and your children back, back at that time when you were so unwell. But, it doesn't always necessarily take, something as significant as that. But I think your journey to where you are just now and continuing on, because I think it's never finished, this journey of evolving and becoming awakened. And it's been the same for so many of my guests and myself, that, yeah, we sit here and talk about, how we now live our lives in this kind of more spiritual sense. But it's never just one moment. It's always a journey. And it's, for me,
Mhm.
that's the bit again where I say about you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from where you're at, because it's these small moments in time that you initially don't recognize them for what they are. Looking back, you can see how they've all
Yes.
been stepping stones to where you are just now. But I think it's like, yeah, there might be one particular moment where that kind of final, do you know the term, the penny drops? I don't know if that's a UK
No.
saying. Yeah, the penny drops. It's like it
Okay.
just lands, something just lands and something kind of awakens in you. They sometimes is that kind of moment. And I know I had that last November in 2024, but it was a years, 3 4 years of a spiritual journey for me to be able to recognize that moment for what it is and to step into that moment. And as you say, that it was felt like I was cracking open, like the me who I've always been, who has been like knocking on chatting, kind of like tapping me on my
Hmm.
shoulder for so long, and I just kind of kept ignoring it. Suddenly was like, here I am, this is who I've always been, this is who I'm meant to be. And I
Hmm.
could get goosebumps, thinking about that moment again. But it's never just, like, and I know for some people like that, there is maybe like some very catastrophic or, like traumatic event that kind of makes them change their lives, but they'll have had little bits coming along the journey that will have kind of got them to that point. But I'd like to just come back to, a bit that you spoke about, and I know a lot of my listeners struggle with inherited beliefs and stories that don't belong to them. And I know a lot of us, I grew up in South Africa, which is, very conservative, and, there's very strong cultures around, as you said, like the role of women. And I mean, it's evolved now, but back in the day when
Hmm.
I was growing up, it was less so, so we a lot of us have those inherited stories and beliefs that don't really belong to us. How, what would you recommend to somebody in terms of recognizing and breaking free, recognizing these beliefs and patterns and breaking free from them?
You know, again, it has to start slowly. And so I'm going to say something and it's going to sound so cookie cutter, but I'll kind of expound on it. But it really does start by going inward. I know that we're all super, super busy, especially if you're still, have kids at home. But whatever time that you can carve out, I mean, even if it's just when you're in the shower, you have to start somewhere. At least that was my journey of I had to get into some spaces where there was no other voices speaking um, to me or at me or like, reinforcing old stories. Like I have to get really quiet. So I feel like my early days, I called them like my hibernation days, where I wasn't being social. I was just like going to work and coming home. They were very, very healing days. So I was spending so much time quiet. So whatever your thing is, if it's quiet and just sitting in nature, and the only voice that you hear is your own. And beyond that, learning to quiet your mind and trying to get into spaces of just existing, just be. So it started there. Get really quiet as much as you can to carve out some time where there's no other influences on you except for you. and see what comes up. Because I know for many of us, getting quiet and not doing anything, that in itself is a challenge. But it's kind of like step one. You've got to go inward and you've got to quiet all the voices that are around you that are trying to tell you who you are. And you have to figure that piece out for yourself. And for me, I use different tools. So whether it's journaling, which I still do quite a bit of, um, meditating, and a lot of people will struggle with meditation. So in that case, I would say, just Google or YouTube, like some breath work kinds of things. Start there because that, I was like, oh, so yoga. And during COVID, when I couldn't go to the gym, and so instead was like, well, I've never done yoga. Let me try a 30-day yoga challenge, which I was like, what? But there were breathing techniques folded into that, which helped me. And at first, it feels weird if you've never done that sort of thing before. You're like, this is weird. This is a little woo-woo, but it absolutely helps you quiet the chatter in your mind, and helps you like really get in touch with the core essence of who you really are, because that is the doorway to finding your authentic voice. Um, and beyond that, go seek out mentors, seek out coaches, find your community of people that can kind of help you. People you feel super comfortable around. Like you can just be yourself. You don't feel that anxiety to perform something. You can tell them what's going on with you. That I'm struggling to find my voice. I'm not sure who I am anymore. I've got all these internal anxieties about all of this. That older person, not necessarily older, but your mentor, people that can be your community and breathe some life into you and just listen and sit with you in those spaces. I think those are two of the key things: learning to get quiet, go inward, and then finding your mentor in your community, people that can help you evolve from that space. And there's a lot, I mean, beyond that, Debbie, there's so much work. But for me, it's every day that I start to feel a fear about something, or an anxiety, learning to think about attachment and letting go of those attachments and just being open. Like, it's okay. I remember I was going through a McDonald's line. This was like, I don't know, 6, 8 weeks ago. I hadn't quite retired yet. And I just was having like a, oh my gosh, I'm about to quit this role that has defined me for almost 30 years. This is really scary. And what I said to myself was, picture yourself 5 years from now. You will figure this out because you've always figured this out. And there's no doubt you will figure this out again. And then I just started laughing at myself like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, and also I was just writing down some nuggets that you were talking there, because there's a couple of things, and I'll come back to the you'll figure this bit out in a moment. But one of the things that you started off with was that bit about becoming quiet, becoming still, going inward. And I know certainly for me, and I know it's been true for a lot of women that I've been working with and been having conversations with, is that even just doing that can feel quite scary, because I know for
Yeah.
myself, I had a lot of suppressed anger. I used to
Mhm.
quite pride myself and going, I don't really get angry. And then as I started on this journey, I realized that's because the anger is pushed quite far down.
Way down
I,
there.
I
Yeah.
was too scared to access it, because when I envisioned myself accessing that anger, I could see myself punching holes in walls, not
Mhm.
deliberately wanting to harm anybody, but just the rage, that kind of primal rage that I'd suppressed for so long. And again, like that, I had been working with a coach and a mentor who did this beautiful guided meditation using goddesses. And I was in a felt very safe and contained to be able to go deeper into that, and actually being able to kind of visualize myself expressing the rage, and like wild woman, my hair like literally like
Mhm.
almost kind of like animalistic. And I was like, okay, right, I'm safe to be able to feel this. And I think one of the scary bits about going on this journey of personal development and growth and spirituality is welcoming those parts of you that society have labeled as negative, the anger, the rage, the
Mhm.
frustration, the sadness, the
Mhm.
fear, all those kind of negative emotions. And I think it's so important that we see them as a part of us. rage and anger in my childhood served the purpose of protecting me, you know, but it
Mhm.
also, if I feel rage and anger now, it's showing me where I feel like a boundary has been crossed, or there's an unmet need, or
Yeah.
somebody's not hearing my voice. For me, I
Yeah.
did a lot of work around my voice.
Yeah.
So you bring together behavioral science, as you said, and consciousness expansion work. So those two worlds, I absolutely see them as complementing each other. How would you help somebody to kind of acknowledge and see what they see as the negative parts and emotions of themselves, to be able to integrate that? How would you go about helping someone to do that?
Well, it starts with, like I was talking about, like the going inward piece. And if I expanded on that, those of us who've come through different types of neglect, abuse, or even just, culturally confined spaces, you kind of lose contact with your body. So there's a big disconnect between mind body, hence me walking around with a ruptured appendix for 5 days. How crazy is that?
I mean,
That's
that is
how
like the epitome of
associated.
disconnect, isn't it?
That's big disconnect. And I mean, it would show up everywhere. Even when I was healthy and at work, there were times where I was like, almost disconnected from my own voice. Like I would hear, somebody speaking, oh, that's me talking.
Mhm.
Like that level of disconnect. I was always like almost living like above me, like anxiety wise, like very, very disconnected. So when I work with clients, we kind of start there, like somatic work, like where are you feeling these things? Let's talk about, like, if we did a timeline of your life, let's first timeline out, like, what were the big moments in your life that were happy? Let's mark those. Let's go through that and talk about, like, oh, these were big mile markers for you. If we did like a meditative session, where are you feeling that in your body? And just learning to reconnect. Now let's timeline the other aspect, or the flip side of that, the things that negatively impacted you. Like, let's talk about the time that, somebody said this to you, or you were left out, or you were in a bad marriage. Let's map those out. And again, let's sit with that. Where are you feeling that in your body? Do you get that clenched feeling in your throat? Are you feeling it in your, where is it? Did your shoulders just go way up? Like, let's think about all those things so you can get a little bit reconnected with your own physical body. And then just starting to notice. Don't judge it, nothing but observing, for several days. Like, let's notice those things. So the next time you feel your throat sort of clutch up, what was going on? Was it a conversation with your spouse that made that happen? Was it a coworker? Like, let's think about, like, what is it that's eliciting those things out of you, and start to see patterns. And that's where behavior science starts to come in. Like, oh, I see the pattern. It's under these conditions when I'm making this up. I have done a task or something like that, and somebody pushes back a little bit. I clamp up. Oh, so let's dig into that. Where is that coming from? And from there, we can use the science of behavior to start to shape your behavior. Okay, so what do we want to replace that with? And let's start to build in some new habits that get highly reinforced with the things that we come up with, so that we can start to reshape how you respond to those things that are going to trigger you. But it first starts with, you got to know you. You got to know, where is that coming from in the first place? Where was the first time that you had that feeling? What was going on? Do you see the connections? Do you see the patterns? Now, how are we going to change that? And how, also recognizing, where is it showing up in your life? Like, let's look at your schedule. Is it showing up in how you are over scheduling yourself? You know, things like that. Like, starting to see, like, it isn't just happening in your home, it's happening in the workplace. So the flip side would also occur if I'm coaching people in the business space, where they think that these issues are only at work. Like, oh, well, let's look over here with all your personal. It's happening everywhere. Yeah. Like, that's who you are right now, because you lost connection with you. Let's get reconnected.
Absolutely. You describe what you do so beautifully there. And I think one of the bits that kind of came through for me quite strongly, and again, something that I had to work on for myself and I now help other people with, is that accepting radical responsibility for you. You know,
Mhm.
a lot of us who are, you know, living unconsciously or even starting out on this journey, and that was me as well. I blamed everybody else, you know,
Yeah,
you made me feel this way. They did
yeah,
that, and that's why I'm
yeah,
angry. But when you start, and I do feel like you do need somebody to kind of hold that mirror up and guide you through that process,
yeah.
because it, you know, you don't always see it because you've got your blinkers on and you've got your filters on that you've kind of grown up with. So, you know, being able to see, you know, to see your triggers as things that are inside of you, and
Hmm.
using them as lessons and
Hmm.
opportunities to kind of grow and develop, rather than just constantly externalizing and pushing it out into everybody else. So I think, you know, that's I think one of the biggest takeaways that I have from our conversation, and I hope the listeners do as well, is that bit about it always starts with going inward, and it's always about kind of like looking at what's going on for yourself.
Absolutely. Yes.
Just kind of, I'm conscious of the time, and before we start wrapping up, one of the other points that you spoke about earlier was that, like, you know, you will always figure this out. And I think that's so important. There's a saying, and I can't remember who or where I heard this or read this, that, you know, you have survived 100% of your worst days ever, you know. And we can all
Yeah.
think back to times in our lives where we just thought there's no way we're going to get out of this, you know, alive. Sometimes there's no way we're
Mhm.
going to get through this, there's just no end in sight, and yet here we are. You know, if you're listening to this podcast, you and I sitting here talking to each other, we've survived that. But I can't remember if it was last night or the night before, and I was going to bed, because I still have those moments of like, oh, you know, where's the next paycheck coming from? You know, how am I going to kind of
Yeah,
develop this
that's
consistent
real.
income?
Yeah, for
I
sure.
just thought, like, it was just like a flash that came over me. Like, throughout my life, things have always worked out. They've had to
Right.
work out, because here I am. You know, I've still got a roof over my head. I've still got this,
Exactly.
you know, so,
Yeah, I
and I know,
know.
and I know for some people who might be listening that, you know, it may feel like, you know, that things like they're down and out. You know, things may be a really, really hard struggle just now, but there's always hope. There's always a way out. And one of the things that has got me through some really tricky times over the last few years, has been focusing on joy and prioritizing joy in my life. And I do that more and more now, and it's become, I'm reading a book called The Five Types of Wealth by Sahil Bloom, and he talks about your life razor, which is kind of like that, you know, when you're faced with a difficult decision, you need to think about the person you want to be. So mine is, I always choose joy over obligation. So when I'm faced with a really tricky situation, I think about the version of me who would choose joy over obligation. What would she do? And I always kind of, so it's that razor edge. You kind of fall one way or the other, and I always fall into
Mhm.
the joy bit rather than the obligation bit. But one of the questions I love to ask my guests is how you prioritize joy in your everyday life, and how you would, what you would recommend to people who struggle to do that for themselves right now.
Well, that's a complicated question, and I'm probably going to have a complicated answer, Debbie. But you made me think of there's a Nicholas Tesla quote that he says, "What you focus on expands."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Meaning, you can run a little experiment today of like pick a color of a car, like a red car, and then suddenly you're going to see red cars everywhere. And it's the same with our perspective on things. So I try to practice, if I'm feeling a little and it's okay to feel a little from time to time, but I will also say, either internally or right out loud, what a wonderful life I have. And then go look for the evidence of that. Because sometimes, it maybe you didn't sleep well, or it was the food you ate, or, things are not going that great. But just remind yourself you have a wonderful life, and just keep repeating that internally and out loud, and look for the evidence of that, kind of tied back to what Tesla said, what you focus on expands. Look for the evidence of that, which is going to lead you more on that path of joy. But I also practice when things don't go my way, like not holding on so tight. So there is a brand of ABA therapy called ACT, Acceptance Commitment Therapy, I believe, where it is sometimes about letting go. We always hold on to the rope so tight, don't we? Like we have to control it. We have to fix it. It has to come out just how I have it in my head. Reminding myself to let go, let go. Look at, I'll look back on my life and the journey that I've had and how things have just evolved beautifully. I wouldn't have become this person if I hadn't gone through some of the things that I went through. And so now I'm deeply grateful for that. So every now and then when I get that clinchy feeling because things I think are not going to come out like the way I wanted, like I will literally say, let go of the rope, let go of the rope. Life is beautiful. It's teaching you something all the time and trying to just stay in that space of love and acceptance. And here we go. And it's okay. And what a wonderful life I have. You know what I mean? And even if you're not feeling it in that moment, go look for the evidence of it because you will find it.
Absolutely. And it's that practice of gratitude, really, isn't it? And like
Mhm.
sometimes, literally there's a song, and I've quoted this so many times on this podcast, an artist called Saint Finnegan, and he does very spiritual music, and one of his songs is called Grateful. And he, you'll sing grateful I woke up again, woke up and took a breath again. I'm grateful for the eyes I have, literally like that.
Yeah.
I get goosebumps every time I quote it, but I
Yeah.
listen to that. That's how I start my morning. It's my alarm on my phone. Like that's the song that plays. And sometimes it literally is, if that's all you have, is that you're able to take a breath, that you can smile, that the sun is shining,
Yeah.
even if it's raining, that the earth has been watered, whatever it is, but there is wonder and joy in everything that we have
Absolutely,
around us.
absolutely. And we have the blessing of being on a soul journey and everything has meaning. Everything is beautiful. If, just try to open up to the unpredictable.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story and insights, Christi. It's been an amazing conversation. And one thing that really stood, well, there's so many that stood out for me, but one thing that stood out was what you said way at the beginning of this conversation was that, performance without soul is not really anything. And I think if we're just performing, we're going to be stuck on that hamster wheel, and that's what most people want to come off of, that rat race and daily grind, feeling like you're running to stand still. And I think when you add soul into the mix of what you're doing, when you become intentional about what you're doing, your life just opens up so much more and the possibilities open up so much more.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I am sure that my listeners will want to find out more about you and what you do. So where's the best place they can find you? Where do you hang out?
Well, you can definitely check me out on my website, which is platinumperformancecoaching.org. So you can find me there. You can find me on Instagram under Platinum Performance Coach. You can find me. I just started a YouTube channel
Amazing.
as well called Tales from the Inside. So you can find me there as well. And I try to put out a video 5 times a week. So check me out there as well. What am I forgetting?
Are you on
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn as
You
well?
can
Yeah.
find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, Christi Dickey, Platinum Performance Coach. So look for me there on LinkedIn, look for me on Instagram, and check out my new YouTube channel, Tales from the Inside with Christi.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is we'll put all the links to that in the show notes as well, so you can find Christi there as well. So thank you so much. And it's been an absolute joy speaking to you.
Oh, likewise, Debbie. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Your Worth Your Way. I know you'll be walking away feeling inspired and ready to embrace your worth and prioritize your joy. If you love this episode, I'd be so grateful if you could leave a review or share it with someone who needs a little bit of encouragement today. And don't forget to hit that follow button so you never miss another episode. And you can connect with me, find out more about the podcasts, my guests, and what I do at debbielucas.me/links. And if you don't already, follow me on your favorite social media platform. I'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the conversation there. And until next time, remember that you are worthy exactly as you are.